Good evening, everyone. So this is Dr. Garvi Vats in front of you all, and I'm an educator with Jaipur Academy. I am working as an assistant professor in Jagannath University, Jaipur, and this is an immense pleasure for me to be a part of this academy, that is Jaipur Rehab, and I thank Dr. Himanshu for letting me be a part of this. So today we will be talking about the corticospinal tracts. So starting with the major concept, that is your brain. So we all know that brain has lots and lots of functions, and one primary function is to regulate the actions of our body, right? So for regulating the actions, we all know that the brain has to send certain signals from the cortex till the periphery, right? So what will be the pathway by which brain will be sending all these information? So for that, we have certain tracts, or you can say certain connections from the brain to the periphery, as well as from the periphery till the brain. So all these connections are known as the tracts. So today we will be talking about the descending tracts, that is motor in nature. And one such primary tract is your corticospinal tract. Fine. So, as we all know that brain has both the functions, the motor as well as the sensory functions. So, how will we define that which will be the motor part and which will be the sensory part? For that, what we have done is we have taken a major sulci of the brain, that is the central sulcus. The area that is anterior to the central sulcus, that is considered as the motor area, and the one that is posterior to the central sulcus is considered to be the sensory area. So the area that is just anterior to the central sulcus, that is known as the primary motor cortex. So, and the area which is anterior to this primary motor cortex, that is premotor cortex and the supplementary motor cortex. Now, what happens is whenever a movement is to be done, like for example, a bottle is kept in front of you and you have to pick the bottle. So for that, the brain has to send the signals to the periphery, that is your limbs, to perform this action. The premotor area or the premotor cortex will plan this activity, and the primary motor area will be executing this movement. What does the supplementary motor area does? It is actually responsible for all the primitive motions, that is the motion of the hip or the motion of the trunk. So that is your motor part. Coming to the sensory part, just posterior to the central sulcus is present your sensory part. Further we will go. So what are the pyramidal tracts? The pyramidal tracts derive their name from the medullary pyramid of the medulla oblongata, which they pass through. That is, whenever we are talking about the pyramidal tracts, they are actually passing in between from the medullary pyramids, and hence the name is given to them. These pathways are responsible for the voluntary control of musculature of the body as well as the face. Functionally, they are of two types, corticospinal as well as the corticobulbar tract. The corticospinal is responsible for the musculature of the body, and the corticobulbar supplies the musculature of the head and the neck. So coming to the corticospinal tract, that is the main topic for us. So the corticospinal tract receives the information from the primary motor area, the premotor area, supplementary motor area, as well as the somatosensory area. Coming back to this picture, I would like to rewind this thing again, that the corticospinal tract, what we are talking about, is taking the information from all this area which is around the central sulcus. So it is taking the information from the motor area as well as from the sensory area. Fine. So what, how much information is carried from both the parts? The 60% of information is taken from the motor area, and the remaining 40% is taken from the sensory area. This tract begins in the primary motor cortex, where the soma of the pyramidal neuron, that is the cells of Betz, are located within the cortical layer, fifth cortical layer. So what are the cells of Betz? What happens is that when we talk about the cortex, like if you imagine like this is the cortex of the brain, so there are several cells which are very large in their size, around 60 microns is their size. So these cells are arranged throughout the periphery of the cortex. These cells will be releasing their axons in the central part of the cortex. Fine. The complete periphery is surrounded by the cell bodies, and the axons are coming down from here. Now what happens? The axons of these neurons travel in bundles through the internal capsule, that is the posterior limb of the internal capsule. This arrangement of the axons give an appearance of a crown, hence name is given as corona radiata. In this diagram, we can clearly see that from the cells of Betz, that is the body of these cells, axons are coming downwards and they are passing from the internal capsule. So whole of this appearance, it looks clearly like a crown, hence it is named as corona radiata. Further, what happens? After the internal capsule, the neurons pass through the crus cerebri of the midbrain, coming down to the pons and then to the medulla. If we talk about the diagram of midbrain, so the tracts came from internal capsule. They enter into the crus cerebri of the midbrain and they pass into the pons. In the most inferior, that is caudal part of the medulla, the tracts divide into two. First, the fibers given within the lateral corticospinal tract, they decussate, that is cross over to the other side of the CNS. They then descend into the spinal cord, terminating in the ventral horn at all segmental levels. From the ventral horn, the lower motor neuron go on to supply the muscles of the body. Now what happens is, in the inferior part of the medulla, when the tracts, all of these tracts, a bundle of neurons, it came to the medulla, it actually divided into two parts. Fine. One was the lateral corticospinal tract and the other one was the ventral corticospinal tract. The anterior corticospinal tract remains ipsilateral, that is on the same side, descending into the spinal cord. They then decussate and terminate in the ventral horn of the cervical and the upper thoracic segment at levels. Now, we will have a quick revision of this thing. What happened was, all the cells which were present at the periphery of the cortex, it released several axons. Fine. So these axons, they come together, form a bundle of neurons, and they pass through the internal capsule. From the internal capsule, it further went into the midbrain. From midbrain, that is the crus cerebri portion of the midbrain, it came down to pons and then at the medulla. When the medulla was ending, that is the caudal portion of the medulla, these tracts get divided into two parts, that is your lateral corticospinal tract and the anterior corticospinal tract. Now, what happened is that the 90% of the fibers, they actually decussated. That is, your lateral corticospinal tract, it went from left side to the right side, or you can say that from right side to your left side. Right. So this decussation has taken place in 90% of the fibers. That is, the major portion of these fibers, they get decussated. The remaining portion, it went on the ipsilateral side in the form of anterior corticospinal tract. Fine. So we can assume that what if the injury happens at the region of your brain, that is cortex, what will happen is that if your right side is affected, the effects will be shown on the left side, right? That is your contralateral side. But what we can say is that if the injury occurs at your spinal level, only the ipsilateral side will be affected and not the contralateral side, right? Now we will be talking about the lesions in this tract. Lesions are again divided into two parts. First will be at the level of brain and the other one will be at the level of spinal cord. Now, at the level of brain, it is said, or according to literature, we can say that most of the injuries or the stroke portion, it actually happens in the portion of internal capsule. So internal capsule is particularly susceptible to compression from hemorrhagic bleeds known as the capsular stroke. Such events could cause a lesion of the descending tract. So obviously, we have said that the tracts were coming from the internal capsule. Now, if the internal capsule is having any kind of deficit or any kind of injury is happening around that area, the corticospinal tract, that is the information which is carrying from the brain through the corticospinal tracts till the periphery of the body will be having some kind of deficit. Fine. So if the injury occurs at the internal capsule level, the corticospinal tracts will be damaged. Now, we all know at the level of brain, if this injury is happening, it is an upper motor neuron lesion. So the symptoms will be accordingly. What are the symptoms of upper motor neuron lesion? First is your hypertonia, increased tone, hyperreflexia, clonus, muscle weakness, and mixed sensory motor stroke. Why sensory motor? Because we all know that the corticospinal tract was carrying the information from the motor area as well as the sensory area. Hence, all the signs or all the symptoms which we will be having will be compromising with motor area as well as with the sensory area. So mixed sensory motor stroke will be having contralateral weakness and contralateral sensory stroke. Next, at the level of spinal cord. What happens at the level of spinal cord? The injuries to the lateral corticospinal tract results in ipsilateral paralysis, that is inability to move, paresis, that is decreased motor strength, and hypertonia, that is increased motor strength. Why ipsilateral? Because the decussation happened at the level of medulla. Medulla ended up at the level of your brain. Now we are talking about the spinal cord. So at the level of spinal cord, if any injury occurs, it will be showing the symptoms on the same side. Right. The lateral corticospinal tract can suffer damage in a variety of ways. The most common types of injury are the central cord syndrome, Brown-Sequard syndrome, and the anterior spinal cord syndrome. Fine. So the most common injuries which are occurring are at these three levels. That is, first is your central cord lesion, anterior spinal cord syndrome, and the third one is your Brown-Sequard syndrome. What happens in the central cord lesion, or we can say that why this central cord lesion occurs? What is the etiology behind this? The first and the most important is the hyperextension of the cord, typically within the cervical region. It might happen in a motor vehicle accident as well. Anterior spinal cord syndrome, it usually occurs when there is an obstruction or damage to your anterior spinal artery. Brown-Sequard syndrome, it involves left or right half of the spinal cord gets damaged. So if the spinal cord is getting damaged on the right or the left side, this may lead to your Brown-Sequard syndrome. Further, what happens in the central cord syndrome? Like, what will be the complaints of the patient, or what will be the symptoms we will be getting out of it? So the patient with central cord syndrome have compression of the dorsal column tract, lateral corticospinal tract. This causes bilateral sensory impairments below the level of injury. So here what happens is that whatever the symptoms are occurring, they are saying that it is mostly the sensory impairments, they are occurring on the bilateral side, that is both the sides. Sensory impairment is typically experienced in cape-like distribution across the upper back and down the posterior side of the upper lip. So all these sensory symptoms, the sensory impairments will be occurring in a cape-like pattern. Fine. The cape-like pattern, it actually includes your upper back and down on the posterior sides of your upper limb. Damage to the lateral corticospinal tract causes bilateral weakness of the upper body, but the patient retains the strength in the lower limbs. Clear? Next we'll be going the anterior spinal cord syndrome. It has bilateral deficit to the corticospinal tract. Again, the deficit will be bilateral, that is your right side as well as your left side. They experience bilateral paralysis and paresis below the site of the lesion. So whatever is the site of the lesion, the patient will be having bilateral symptoms, or you can say bilateral paralysis below the level of your lesion. Next is your Brown-Sequard syndrome. It has a unilateral deficit of the lateral cord. Matlab, all the symptoms will be shown on the unilateral side, that is one side. Deficit associated with this syndrome includes ipsilateral paralysis, paresis, and hypertonia, ipsilateral proprioception loss, and contralateral loss of the pain and temperature sensations. So all of these syndromes or symptoms will be shown if the patient is affected in the pattern of Brown-Sequard syndrome, that is either the left part or the left part. With this, I'll be ending my my discussion for today, and I hope I was able to clear some concepts regarding to the corticospinal tract. We can have further discussion regarding this and even the other topics. I invite you for our classes at Jaipur Rehab. You can visit our channel and you can see the recent modules which have been uploaded there. We can have lots and lots of discussion regarding to neuro, and I hope you people enjoyed, and I would like to see you people more often. Thank you. Good night. Stay safe.